Because sometimes there are people who want this job but can't afford this job. So they have to have the other outlet that gets their mortgage paid. So I think
Yeah, see, and that isn't that a crazy thing? I can't afford this job.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially with like how gas prices are right now.
Exactly.
That's got to be very tough for a lot of people.
Hey everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we are headed out on the road for the Friends for Life podcast world tour. So let's hop in the car and get going.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, we have Brittany Gray with Community Living Experiences. Did I get it right?
Absolutely.
All right, so welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So we like to ask usually to get you kind of thinking about your career in this field of work. It's not a common field that a lot of people get into that I've found coming into this like as a newer person. So how did you find your way to working in the field of like IDD and care and stuff like that?
As I was a child, I have 3 cousins who have disabilities. So it was normal for us all to just be together. And my mom actually started working in the field first. And so then when I realized that this was something that you could do for a living, then I began working in it as well. So it's just been my life.
How long have you been in it?
It'll be 18 years next month.
18.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Wow. So, a lot of people either come into this field and leave immediately or very quickly or stay. So, you have some family history with people that have disabilities, but what keeps you working? Because it can be a difficult thing to work in.
It can be very difficult at times. The things that keep you here is this is not just a job just to get a paycheck. You have to be loving and caring and compassionate and enjoy what you do. Mm-hmm. So every day I come in, it's a new day. It's the same people, but you have different opportunities every day and you can restart so that love and compassion can just grow and grow and grow and you don't stick on what's yesterday.
Yeah.
So you can go to work and not feel well. You can go to work and your hair's a mess. You can go to work and not have makeup on and none of them care because they love you anyway. Yeah. So just having that every single day, somebody cares about you as much as you care about them, gives you a reason to come back.
And that's one of the things I found very interesting. It's with this field particularly is it's not like just a 9 to 5 where you go into an office building and you type on the computer all day and then you turn the computer off and go home and it's done. It's not like that. Yeah. So how would you describe what you have done in the past or what you do now to like maybe someone who doesn't really know what you do?
Doesn't really know what I do.
This is always the $1 million question, honestly.
Yeah.
Because explaining what a DSP is so tough, I think.
Well, I would say that it's having somebody's life in your hands. In my opinion, it's just as much important as all the doctors and nurses out there because you are going to shape somebody's life. You are going to help somebody become something more than they were yesterday. So you are going to be a teacher. You are going to be a chef. You are going to sometimes kind of have a mother role. You are going to be the laundry person. You are going to be everything that multiple people are going to be. So you can't just go in and be like, I'm just going to clock in and see what today brings. No, you're like, what's for dinner? What needs cleaned? What needs washed? Who needs to go where, what, when, why? So pretty much get up and get ready to be everybody every day.
I almost think we need to change the title. Like listening to you say that, instead of DSP, maybe it should be like life companion.
Right.
Like, I think
Yes.
that is a better title because
Yes.
that's basically what we're doing. We're going through someone's
yeah.
life
Yes.
and we're their companion in every step of it.
Yes.
And there's some things that we're strong at and we can do, and there's other things that we're weak at. Man, that's it. Life
Yep.
companion.
That sounds wonderful.
From here on out, DSPs, you're going to be known as life companions to me.
Well, with that comes a lot of responsibility, and do you find it difficult to separate? Like a lot of people nowadays talk about work-life balance and all this stuff. I mean, which there's a place for that. I mean, there needs that. But is that a lot harder in this field, would you say, because of like just the personal connection with who you're working with?
Yes. And I think it's much harder to just let go, especially if you were just at work and somebody went to the hospital and you don't know whether they got to come home or not.
Yeah.
And those are people that you care about and that you take care of every day. It's hard to just leave it behind when you walk in the door. And I know me personally, my husband also works in this field, and we all sometimes work with the same people. So you don't just go home and leave it at the door if everybody knows that same person went to the hospital. So, it's very tough to leave it behind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, have you ever been so dedicated that you got in trouble for it? I can think of some times in my past that.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you explain? Or do you want to throw it out there? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, it was about probably 17 years ago. So, we had to wash blankets all the time, and all of their blankets were like pretty much decomposing because, you have to wash them so much with all the accidents. And there was a 90-year-old man, and he used like 2 blankets and a comforter every day. And I came into work and he didn't have his comforter. And he asked for it, so I put it on the bed. And the next day they was like, "We're not putting comforters on the bed. They have blankets. It's warm enough." And I was like, "You're not going to tell me that my 90-year-old man can't have his comforter when he wants it." They were like, "No, his comforter is falling apart. You can't wash it anymore. Like, you need to leave it off the bed." And I was like, "Nope, ain't doing it." So they were like, "We realize that you care, but there comes a time and place when you have to listen." And I was like, "I don't think this is it."
This is where I draw my line in the sand.
Like, he's 90, he wants that raggedy old comforter, he's gonna get it.
Yeah, I get, like, why live to 90 if you can't demand a damn comforter, no matter how jacked up it is.
Now, in hindsight, I get it now, and they did go buy him a new one, but.
Well, it makes me just think, because there's so many times as a life companion that
Yes.
you have to explain to people who are not in their in their individuals' daily lives.
Yeah.
Literally this morning, I got an email that I saw in which I understood why the person is asking the questions that they're asking, but they are not there all the time to be demanding the things that they started demanding.
Right.
So that, like, it frustrated me. But it always leads me back to the point, like, okay, I need to do a better job at teaching, communicating, or educating right now, because there's a disconnect here.
Right.
For you to think this and this is going to be the logical result from that.
Yeah.
We have to do a better job. But I was just curious.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to get to talk to people who actually are working with individuals. Because a lot of the people we have on the show are, from county boards, or they're, higher up in the company.
Right.
We talk a lot about like shortages and staff and stuff. Has that affected you in any way?
Absolutely. There are times where you work 14, 21, 30 days in a row because there's no other option. And it's not any individual company's fault. It's not, their fault. There just is not enough people who want to come and work here or don't know what it is about and how rewarding it is. And you just gotta take it one day at a time and pray that the Lord takes you through.
How many, what's your longest shift that you ever worked in your
19
history?
hours.
19 hours? Mm-hmm. All right, 36 for me with a 1 hour break. But I was a supervisor. Mm-hmm. So it was like went in, then I had to go back to the office, then went back.
Yes.
Go back to the office.
Yes,
And I actually got in trouble for doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, but I went to the office and I was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. And I'm thinking like, oh, I'm about to get kudos because I mean, I'm showing the grind. I'm showing all that I'm doing. And no, the owner of the company said that is not the proper attire to be coming into this office. So yeah, I got to write up for that. But my individual was okay.
Yeah. Alive, fed, healthy, awesome.
But 19 hours, did you at least get a break? A meal sent or delivered or just right in the house?
I went from the office to probably McDonald's and right into the house and then back to McDonald's and right back into the office.
More power to you. I'm so, look, we're gonna start giving some actual round of applauses for this kind of stuff because there's a lot of people making these sacrifices for other people, and there's a lot of others who don't recognize or know that these are real sacrifices.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of positions that are just 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
No holidays.
No holiday. They get vacations without having to schedule it with 3-4 other people to make sure it's okay.
Absolutely.
So with me even saying that, how do you guys handle vacations and giving your people more breaks and more time off and your circle of helpers?
I know myself and Angel, the other lady that I work with, the other program director.
Angel too.
Our staff can call us at any given time, and if they need us, our homes are within 15 minutes of the office. Nice. So we really reiterate on a regular basis that if they need us to be there, we're a phone call away. And that has happened. And we just go over. If they need to clock out and leave, we're there. We try every day to tell them how much we appreciate them. And I think what helps too is they see that we're right there with them. We're not just in the office, just demanding them to make sure that all these things are complete, that we're right there. We're making sure that all those things are complete as well. So we just try to make sure that they know that we're there. If they call, we try to get there within 15 minutes. And if not, we keep in contact until we can. So
that's awesome. And have you noticed, since you've been doing this for quite a while, have you noticed any changes in maybe, not necessarily the workload, but we've kind of noticed a running trend over the last few days of people talking about the amount of just paperwork you have to do compared to when people started maybe a decade ago?
Absolutely. In the amount of paperwork that needs done, the amount of information that is not given anymore. 18 years ago, it was pretty much like your Bible. You had a whole book of this is what they like, this is what they don't like, this is what they came from, this is what they didn't. And then you just had a 15-minute check whether they were okay or not. And now there is multiple things, and getting people out into the community and lots more paperwork.
How has that affected just the care? Is it making it more difficult, or does the paperwork just get pushed back and makes everything more stressful, or?
I think when you have new staff who have never worked in the field, that's when the barrier is, because they don't have their routines yet. So either paperwork lacks, and I wouldn't say care lacks, but maybe not done in a timely manner as somebody who has been there for a long time. So I think once the routines are in place and once you learn them, I don't think that it is that big of a deal. But paperwork usually is what's shoved to the back.
Yeah, I could imagine.
For most instances.
Yeah. And I think paperwork, especially after talking to Megan, goodness, it's just in the way. It is really in the way. And I thought about this a lot last night on how we could eliminate some of it and bring back the person aspect. But I literally don't know how it's going to happen.
I have no idea. And a lot of it is like repetitive.
Yeah.
It's the same thing on every single paper, but every single person needs the same thing on a different letterhead, on a different...
You know, and it takes me to a place in which simplicity is no longer, I think, what we're searching for. It seems like we have all of these things to make life easier, but it just makes it more complicated.
Yes.
And how do you reduce your interactions with paperwork, increase your interactions with the individual while educating the community? Hypothetical question, but just really, how do you do all of that at once?
Yeah, because really before all of the paperwork, you didn't have the let's take them out to dinner, let's take them to the movies, let's take them to meet people. It was, oh my, we have 8 people who could possibly swarm that smorgasbord.
Yeah.
And how are we going to stop them to? Well, it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
All right. Well, you got 18 years in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Scariest story. Yeah, I know I've told some pretty creepy ones.
Scariest story. I think it was in the middle of behavior, and I got headbutted and got my nose broken.
Oh, goodness. You had to think about it. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That shows what kind of field of work that we are in.
And, you have support from people, but when you are in that situation and somebody can't just be right there to have your back and you have to wait for them, so you have to pray that you're doing everything correctly so you don't get in trouble with your nose bleeding all over the place,
Yeah.
So I think that was the scariest because there was 2 of us there, but we needed one more.
Yeah. Dude, like, and we are fighting, or the government is fighting to give increases. Like, come on. I go to work, get my nose broke and beat on, and I'm still worried about policy and procedure.
They're like, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Get me a towel.
Yeah, right. But make sure you're hands on, hands off.
Yeah.
Hands on, hands off.
I still got one clean arm.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God. How do you handle that situation? I mean, what is like the policy for that? I mean, that's like so counterintuitive to think that you would have to like still try and think like logically when you're getting like your ass kicked essentially. Like, what do you do? Yeah.
To be honest, you pray a lot. I mean, in 18 years, there's been plenty of times where my dad and my son have said, why do you go back to work every day? Mm-hmm. But in reality, yeah, I've gotten my nose broken, my hair pulled, gotten bit, but those are not the reasons why you go to work every day. You go to work because that same person who broke your nose yesterday needs all the love and attention they can get today. Mm-hmm. Because just because it happened yesterday doesn't mean it's going to happen today. And they are so remorseful because when those things happen, 9 times out of 10, they can't control it and they can't stop it. So the things that they can control outweigh the things that they can't.
So when I started working with Tony here a few years ago, I don't do any like hands-on work usually or anything like that. But how I've started to notice that, hearing about stuff like this, like violent things that happen, mm-hmm. and then you start to watch the news and you start to see like violent stuff happening, people getting into fights and, all this stuff. How much do you think is like what you would say in like the community violence is people with undiagnosed stuff going on? I mean, I think about that sometimes. Like,
I absolutely do believe that. There are so many people who don't get health care because they don't have money. Their jobs either don't offer it or they offer it, but you can't afford it anyway. And there's so many people out there who don't have the opportunity to get those diagnoses or get those medications that, yeah, I absolutely believe that.
And, that actually goes into the account, too, of the continued rising numbers of all of these intellectual delays and so on and so forth, including autism and stuff. Because now that people are getting the healthcare, we're noticing more and more of these diagnoses mm-hmm. popping up. And then at that, there was a stigma in the past that, I've constantly talked about through, especially in the Black community where I'm from, we didn't go to the doctor, then you're not going to diagnose my kid with something unless I'm getting Social Security from it. Like, I need to see that check.
Right.
But like my father, he was a very strong believer in me learning how to adjust my brain around the world and not take a pill and then the world adjusting around me.
Right.
I think it needs to be give and take on both sides, but yeah, definitely increase in mental illness in a lot of places.
Well, and you think like what you would consider like a sane, rational person is not going to just commit an act of violence usually. I mean, people can get so upset that they do something like that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you see someone doing something that's like irrational, my first thought would be like, are they okay? Do they have something going on that's undiagnosed? Mm-hmm. Because you see people running around on the street, like screaming at the public, like that's not something that like a person does normally. So.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, we also got to look, that could be a diabetic situation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a stroke, like there's so many levels. And this is why healthcare education is important on every aspect, not just even for us. You know, yes, we do this professionally, but if I'm out in the community, it's this field of work that has me as alert as I am. Like my family can't stand when I go out sometimes because I'm looking for exits. I'm trying to find the perfect seating. If there's a large group of people, I'm noticing every person that's coming in, who's going out, if they're coming in with kids. So, you know, if you didn't come in with kids, you know, and I think the community as a whole, we should be doing that for one another without having to ask sometimes. It breaks my soul when I see these occasions on the internet where people are like fighting and doing all of this stuff, but you see 37 phones out and nobody's trying to be logical. You know, okay, we only need 1 or 2 people to record. Now let's get the discourse of this out done. But I don't even know if it was a question in that anymore. I just kind of went on a rant.
It's just a passing thought I had, you know, and it's just, you know. Is there anything that on the opposite side of this, is there anything that has happened in the past, like any story where you're just like, wow, this is so freaking amazing? Maybe somebody who, you know, changed your life. Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's one in particular instance that changed my life. My life as a whole, I pretty much have grown up in this field. Starting, I was 19 years old. I was a new mom. So everything I know today is because of this field. It isn't just one instance. I've learned lots. Patience. Some people just have patience. I've had to learn lots of patience and techniques to be calm. So I went to college and I got my degree, but being in this field has taught me so much more than I think any in-school setting could be. Not that I'm saying don't go to college, because you definitely should, but especially with the county board that we have here, they offer so much to people. So many ways to cope with life, so many ways to help people in here. I just think as a whole, this field has shaped me to be who I am.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. That's for sure. Patience being one of the key ones, you know, and it's really, that's something that I've really, you know, learned from a lot of people is they've constantly have to practice being patient and kind when maybe it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that a lot of people that we've interviewed are very compassionate just because of the nature of the field. Like you have to be that kind of person to work in this field. You can't just be...
Yeah, it's not just a 9 to 5 where you can clock in and clock out and not have any feelings.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that was really even difficult for me was when we when we first started, before we did the podcast and stuff, Tony just had me kind of like almost freelancing, going around to different houses and taking photos and little short videos and stuff. And then, you know, like literally one time last year, maybe it was not super long ago, went to a house, filmed something for someone, and then like a few days later he calls me, he's like, yeah, they're gone because of COVID. And I'm just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
That's not something I've ever had to deal with in the workplace. It was like, how do you handle that? Like it happens often
Yeah.
for you, especially working as long as you did. I mean, that's just like, I've never had to experience that. Like I was just talking to this person. I'm still editing the video and
Right. There was one gentleman I took care of, and typically when you work in the field, you're with them. So the whole process, you were there when they're fine, and then they get sick, and then you are there hour upon hour upon hour, not getting paid to make sure that they're not alone. And I was probably 20, and I told my mom, I said, I don't know if I can do this again. And she said, but how do you think it would be if you weren't there?
yeah.
How do you think it would be if that person was all alone? Because 9 times out of 10, we are who they have. So even though it's tough on us, you got to turn around and look, and how tough would it be if we weren't there for them at those moments? And I'm like, wow. So it's tough, but
Well, that's one of the things that blows my mind is like, you're putting all this insane physical, emotional effort, hours upon hours working in the field. And then we're sitting over here on the other end trying to get enough money that you guys can have like a livable wage. It's just
Right.
asinine to me
Yeah.
to think about that, because I understand, like I hear the debate like every day from working with Tony and stuff. And, you know, it's just so wild to me to think that there's not a solution that can happen, because like, say like a corporation, they just do whatever they want to raise prices and offset it to the customer, whereas you can't do
Right.
that because it's like to government funding. And like, we think it's really important for these stories to get out, to get people to realize that like this isn't just some like low, like people consider it to be like a low end, like whatever
Right.
kind of job, and it's like absolute
we're not
horse
flipping
crap. Yeah.
burgers. No
Yeah.
offense to any of them, because
But that's not a life.
Right.
Until you like poison somebody. But
Right.
they have processes put in place so that doesn't happen. Wash your hands for 20 seconds, wear gloves, you know, and our processes are more of like, do this extra paperwork. Do you see us moving? Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing now.
okay.
I am looking for more part-time people, more people who are looking to do this as volunteer, for long-term versus looking for full-timers the same. We want full-timers, yes, of course. We want people to dedicate their lives to it. But I'm almost tired of making the excuses that we've been making and hearing all the time. We can't make this, we can't do that, da-da-da-da. So I'm kind of putting it back into the universe that, hey, if you say that you enjoy humanity, if you say that you love your community, fill out an application, give us 1 day a week, 4 to 8 hours. Can you
Right.
do that? Because that right there would give someone like you the sanity you need to
That
be
would
able to
give me
spend
4
time
to
with
8 hours.
Yeah. You know, to spend time with your family, to recalibrate your brain and stuff. Do you think that is an effective way to possibly do this? Would it work in your company?
We actually do have one lady who has retired from 2 other jobs, actually. And she has come back and helps with mornings, and she helps with appointments,
Good.
and grocery shopping. So, yeah, I really think that is helpful, because sometimes there are people who want this job but can't afford this job. So they have to have the other outlet that gets their mortgage paid. So I think
Yeah, see, and that isn't that a crazy thing? I can't afford this job.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially with like how gas prices are right now.
Exactly.
That's gotta be very tough for like a lot
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
Because you're driving people places. I know, like, My wife has her independent provider certification, so she does that a lot. And like when the gas prices she went up, she's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with like the mentality is more community inclusion, more community activities, more new experiences,
Yes.
and a lot of that costs money and petrol.
So one thing I'm always curious about with someone who's like a veteran, you know, who's done this for a long time, what have you seen change from when you started until now? Better, worse, indifferent? I mean, what has changed over the years?
Actually, there's quite a few things that have changed over the years. When I first started, it was like you were scared to take anybody anywhere because who are they going to run after? What were they going to steal? You know, oh my gosh, we can't take them to a restaurant. They slobber everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and at 19 years old, coming into this field is like, then like in everyday life, then I'm like, oh my gosh, is my kid going to touch something? Should we not let people touch anything?
Yeah.
You know? And then now it's, well, if they steal an extra cheeseburger, just pay for it. You know?
Right.
Take some extra wipes with you, clean up, you know, whatever. So these scared to taking them out into places when you were told not to, there are still some, you know, concerns that everybody has depending on each different person, but you can go out and not be scared to take them somewhere.
I agree.
That's interesting. So in the past, was it not taking them out just because, like, what was the reasoning? What was the logic behind it?
Because they just didn't do well.
Oh, okay.
And like, you know, 18 years ago, they all went to the same job. They didn't have separate places to go or different places to choose from. They all went to the same place. There was no so-called typical people that were with them. They all got on the same bus. They all went there for the same amount of hours. They all did the same thing with the same people. So back then, there wasn't we need to get them into the community. We need to get more awareness. It was, this is their routine. This is what they do every day. And be careful, because if you take them here, then they're going to do this or they're going to do that. You didn't let them learn, not so much let them, but you didn't take them to give them the opportunity to learn and to grow, because we just didn't have the resources back then that we have now.
That's very interesting. So it's like, that's a huge change, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you do think about it, when I was a kid, I never saw anybody with disabilities out in the public, really. I mean, like every once in a while, you'd see somebody at like the zoo or something.
Right.
But now I see people with disabilities everywhere. But I don't know if I don't know if that's because it's like, because I'm doing this now. Like I notice more, because when I'm at the store, I'm just like, one track mind trying to find something most of the time. I'm like, in and out, get me out of here. I'm not a store dweller.
Right.
But my wife, though, she takes a guy to the store every week. That's like one of the things she does. That's like the whole reasoning for them. They run errands. And I was like, it's so different to see, because she used to work as like a DSP and then like a supervisor and things like that. And to see the difference of like how less stressful that is for her.
Yeah.
It is so wild, because she was getting phone calls at 3 a.m. and, you know, I like wake up and I'm like, oh, where is she? I don't know. But now, you know, I'm always so like surprised how people can do that long term, because I don't know, is it something you get used to, or you just love it that much? Because that's like I used to work in construction, and I worked, you know, my share of like 16, 17, 18 hour days, and it just whoops the crap out of you.
You know, when I was younger, you just got used to it. Now that I'm getting older, there are some days I'm like, Lord, please give me 3 hours. I don't know if my hips can take another hour.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know what? Those odd calls, like the odd timing calls and stuff, I always think it comes from a training. Or lack thereof. Once you, as a supervisor, and correct me if I'm wrong here, once you teach your team how to communicate with you, then it gets much easier. Some people will call and make those 3 o'clock in the morning calls about no bread for lunch in the morning, and you're like, well, Okay,
Yeah.
make a lettuce wrap.
Right.
You know, you gotta. It's almost us teaching people how to problem solve. There's so many people who have just been used to people telling you what to do, just
Yes.
the whole time. Just do this, do this, do this, and now that's how people are acting. You know, hey, what are we
Right.
doing? What are we doing? And the minute that they run into any kind of problem, it's like
Exactly. Exactly. And I think too, and I realize even in my own children, I have one that just turned 18, one that'll be 20, and one that'll be 21.
Congrats.
Thanks. As I see them as adults, it's like there's lots to learn.
Yeah.
Like, oh my, why didn't we teach them that 10 years ago? And so I think nowadays it's much different than when I was a kid. We spend more time on our cell phones and in our homes than we did out and about learning all those life lessons. And so you're like, well, you should know how to do that. Well, they didn't get to run around and fall off those train tracks because you didn't give those they didn't have those options. So just the different learning. So I really have to take a step back and like each generation was taught differently. So just because, an older person in our field knows this doesn't mean that the younger person in our field knows that. Just because you can whip up a noodle from scratch doesn't mean that 19-year-old can whip up a noodle from scratch.
That's one thing. I love technology. I just love cameras and video and audio equipment and stuff. And I've had a huge shift in the way I think about that stuff nowadays. I mean, for individuals, especially, people who can't talk or limited mobility, technology is amazing, a way to communicate.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And, I've had, like I was saying a couple episodes ago, I had full conversations with a guy who had just had an iPad, who just talked. He's typing on his iPad and we're having a full conversation. It's just an awesome way to communicate. But then again, people get so lost in these phones nowadays, and that's coming from me. I work in social media for a living, essentially. Like that's like my whole day is that. Yeah. And I've found myself telling myself, I'll be like scrolling through Instagram or something. I'll be like, what am I doing? This is such a waste of time.
Yeah.
It is. Have you noticed? Is that something you have to deal with a lot? Working in the field or not?
Yeah, pretty much. My 12-year-old and my 18-year-old, they always have their ear pod in. Something's playing. I'm like, if you don't look up, you're gonna run into the wall.
My daughter tripped yesterday. She tripped. And I was laughing. I was like, look, that's what you get.
Yeah. I'm like, can you see the food on your plate with that phone in front of it? I mean, you know what you're eating today?
Yeah.
Do you get your kids involved in the field at all? Do they attend events?
My daughter actually works for the same company I do.
Oh, nice.
And
So does my son.
my youngest son, he asks lots of questions, but I'm not really sure if this is something he would do. My 18-year-old is like, Mom, I'm not wiping nobody's butt. I can't do that. He was like, I was like, well, there are places where, Mom, I can't do that. But he's grown up with me this whole time. Like, when it was just him and I, people would come to our house back then. If the electric went out, we just brought people home. And, we all slept on couches and they slept in the bedrooms. In 2004, when all the electric was out, we had people for 7 days.
Wow.
So like he has grown up with it and he is very comfortable and complacent with people around. But he's like, yeah, I can't do the care aspect, Mom.
Yeah. I think we scare people sometimes, and we don't recognize it.
Absolutely.
But there's always time.
Yeah.
Because I never thought that my kids would take as much interest as they are. And the things that my oldest is doing is phenomenal. He got to meet Director Hawk the other day, and they had wonderful conversations. He's slowly trying to grow in the field. But I think the coolest part is you start to you get new approaches for things because they grew up in a whole different world than we did.
Right.
And not only do the approaches change, the reactions because a lot of our individuals that he even served had been around, but they're like, whoa, no one has ever tried this with me like this before. So, it kind of, I don't want to say tricks the mind, but that's basically what it does. It creates a whole new, what's the wavelengths? You know what I'm talking about? The synapses. There you go. So you have new synapses firing, and it creates more learning and education. But I knew that I was doing something wrong when one of my 13-year-old, he was around 4 or 5. My wife called me and she told me this story. And I guess I left my briefcase by the front door. And he went and grabbed her phone and grabbed the briefcase. And he's walking around like this with his head down and just like deep breathing. Then he puts the briefcase down and he starts pressing on the phone and he says, HKMRLL, and walking around. And she was like, guess who he's being? I was like, who? She's like, you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? She was like, you remember the other day when you were on the phone with MUI? So I'm sitting here, I'm having a conversation with MUI. I'm using all these acronyms and stuff, and he's just soaking it all in. Oh, my whole, I don't even want to, my whole demeanor was just negative. I'm not even going to pretend, as I knew I was mad at that moment. But and I'm like, this is what we're doing. We're tearing down our own field of work and what we want other people to be a part of just by our demeanor, by our actions, by our look. So, I mean, it was a realization and awakening to me. But I say that to say for anybody listening who's in this field, we got to make people feel a little more welcome to come to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my husband didn't work in this field when we met, and it took me 5 years.
Wow, to get
5 years. And finally, he put in an application, and now he loves it.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's super awesome.
He went from factory to factory, and I'm like, you're just unhappy. What's it got? You put in an application, you go. If you don't like it, don't stay.
Yeah.
I was like, but I'm telling you.
I love it.
Has it made your life more interesting having you both working in the same field?
Well, what is interesting is the basic rules are all the same, worldwide. But then the company rules are all different. So I'm like, what do you do that for? He's like, I don't know what you do that for. But there's lots more understanding now that he's in this field of why you do the things you do and why you stay, even though somebody punched you yesterday, Yeah. So that has, because at first it was an argument. Why do you stay there and let them beat on you? I'm like, because they just don't get it. Now he's like, I get it.
Okay. So with community living experiences, what are they about? What's their mission? What's their goals? What do you do overall? I mean, is it just home health care or is it more?
Here in Licking County, we have 4 homes. One is a licensed home and 3 are IOs. And then we have 2 individuals who just get a few hours a week. So we have 3 homes that we staff all the time, and then 2 people that we just go and help when they need help or want to go out. So it's a variety. We hope one day we'll get to grow, but we need some staff.
Staff to do that.
But they do also have Franklin County and Marion County. So there's 3 different counties that everybody's in. And there's me and Angel here, and then so.
Okay. But that's the great way to do it. And going back to what another former guest said, sometimes it's good to keep that tight-knit so you can know what your staff are going through, what your individuals are going through, the communication is there. And when it all boils down to it, you kind of have some kind of relief of, I don't have to relearn a new person. I don't have to relearn new staff. All of those things come with their own challenges.
Right, and Angel and I both just became program directors. I came to CLE in November, and she was just promoted shortly before I came. So learning the new rules.
Yeah, you gotta get your feet under you.
Learning everything. But, it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it is time for a little game, Tony.
That we call Rapid Fire.
Oh, I was warned about this.
Yes.
Oh, the word's starting to get out. That's not good.
Well, I did notice I didn't even do a drum roll that time. I'm trying to get all of this super cool. All right, Rapid Fire is a series of 3 questions in which I give you that are set in a would you rather scenario.
Okay.
The quicker you answer them, the faster you will get out of this. But if you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Would you rather sleep with blinding lights on or loud sounds?
Lights.
Lights, okay. Would you rather eat an animal that you have raised or raise an animal that will eventually eat you? When you're dead, of course. Like, it's not going to eat you alive.
I'd rather eat the animal I raised.
Thank you. Lastly, would you rather walk a mile through poop to eat after fasting for 24 hours or walk a mile through urine after not drinking for 24 hours?
Ew.
Yeah.
I would probably walk through poop because hopefully I would have shoes on.
I was thinking I would do the poop because, like, urine, they say it's sterile enough.
It'll soak in.
Well, if you're thirsty enough after a while, if you haven't had nothing to drink for 24 hours and you're walking a mile through urine, I mean, that might be tempting.
That would not be tempting at all.
Paul's face is priceless.
I would run that mile. I would run that mile as full out sprint and be done with it.
Oh my.
Oh, man.
That is the worst question I think you've ever asked.
We got a lot to go back through.
Anyway, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yes.
Very, very informative for me. I hope it's informative for the people listening. And is there any closing stuff that you would like to let people know, maybe if they're coming into the field or maybe people are considering leaving, or any sentiments you'd like to leave with the world? Go ahead.
I think we've pretty much covered most, other than I think this is one of the most rewarding jobs that I have ever had. So if you want something that gives you purpose in life, come work for us.
There you go. CLE sounds like a great company, guys. Please look them up.